one thing that we know for a fact that is coming from DC in 2021, no matter what happens production wise, is the Zack Snyder version of Justice League, or Justice League as it was always intended to be. Sure. Keep telling yourself that, Zach. Um, well, it finally has a release date in 2021 of sometime in March. I have been very vocal that I'm not overly excited for this. I'm not a fan of the direction that Zack Snyder took his movies. I forget who it was. I think it might have been Nando V Movies. He had the spot on analysis of Zack Snyder of he wants to do a movie with Batman and Superman like characters, but not a movie with Batman and Superman. Like, the reason his Watchmen movie works is because those characters are like mainstream comic book characters, but they're allowed to be sad and depressing. Zack Snyder wants to have a Superman-like character, but not a not a Superman movie, if that makes sense. I have not been a fan of the direction that he's taken the DCEU, and I feel like once we get past the Snyder thing, we can finally move forward in a more optimistic direction. Now, some things have come to light that make me more on board with the Snyder Cut. Walter Hamada, in his discussion about aggressive expansion, has said that the Snyder Cut more or less will be a one-off. They say that it's a cul-de-sac of storytelling. Basically, it will end where it started. Of this will be more or less the end of the Zack Snyder stuff. And he also said that this Snyder Cut will be non-canon to the DCEU, which I'm much more on board with that. Like, if you told me all the Zack Snyder movies are Elseworld stories, I'd be much more okay with that than anything else. It's a prime example of, Snyder fans are going to hate me for this, but it makes me go along the lines of Batman and Robin. The reason why people hate Batman and Robin is, there's many reasons, but at the time Batman and Robin came out, there weren't a lot of comic book movies. So what you saw was basically what you were going to get for a few years. And in regards to DC, when Zack Snyder was first starting everything, that was it for DC. Now, if we get in the middle of this big DC explosion that might be on the horizon, where we get new Superman movies, new Batman movies, Aquaman, Shazam movies, maybe even a Nightwing movie, I refuse to give up on that, and then Zack Snyder comes back, I think I'd be more okay with that, because he would just be another voice throwing out his creative vision out there. When he first started his DCEU, it was his way or the highway. If you wanted to see any of your favorite DC characters, this was the only way to see them in live action. Whereas that's not the case anymore. Plus, Snyder fans are just bullies, and I'm really just waiting for this to be done with so they can hopefully move on to other projects. I think people always debate about Last Jedi. I think the Snyder Cut's just as bad in terms of fan division. You either love Snyder with everything or you hate him with everything. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think if given the right material, he's great. But that material is not a lot of the DC characters. So I'm still tentatively curious about what is different about his version. I believe the reshoots that we got, knowing what Walter Hamada is saying, is more or less we're just doing this to tie up loose ends with Zach. I bet his reshoots are more or less to kind of give closure, because he had this whole 5-movie arc or whatever. I bet you that some of the reshoots were kind of like to nip some of the edges a little bit and kind of clean up his version that doesn't tease future things. But Snyder does, as much as I'm not a big fan of him as a filmmaker, Zack Snyder's one heck of a self-promoter when he wants to be. He can get fans all riled up. So you see that the Snyder Cut finally has a release date. I don't think you and I have actually talked about it, Michael, but what are your thoughts on the Zack Snyder version of Justice League?
Yeah, but I'll answer the same way as I did earlier. I'm rather conflicted because I did not like um, you know, Justice League at all, and it was a tragedy what happened in the production of that in the personal life of Zack Snyder. So I have no animosity towards him. I have a lot of empathy in regards to what happened, and they were able to finish a movie under non-ideal circumstances and put it out, and I went and saw it, and I was like, well, that was a movie very similar to what you described in Wonder Woman 1984 as. And so I have no desire to see it again. Now, given this news and all the rumors that going up to it, as somebody who did not see the director's cut of Dawn of Justice for the same reasons why I don't really care about this, they've also given me less reason to care because it's not going to be part of the DCEU's canon. So even if I do like it, I guess from a character standpoint, I really don't have any hope there. So
It's okay.
will
Neither the characters in
reluctantly
the
watch
movie.
it because that's really funny. I will reluctantly watch it like I will, I guess, from Wonder Woman 1984. They just haven't sold me, and I guess I'm so reluctant because it's like, why would I spend my time doing that when I can be doing other things with my time and consuming other forms of content? Because this seems more like a chore. I have to actually think about it, and as a movie fan myself, I'd rather not have to think about watching a movie. I'd rather be like, yeah, that's awesome. That's coming in. I can't wait for it. And I honestly just don't have that reaction here.
Yeah, I think Snyder is. If Snyder was a cinematographer and a cinematographer alone, he would be one of the best cinematographers in the business today. But it's when you have to construct a story with words and plot and everything else around those images that he gets into issues. My rule of thumb with Zack Snyder has always been, if you need drab and depressing and a pessimistic worldview, then Zack Snyder's your guy. If you need hope and inspiration, it's not him, because he wants characters to be cool and tough. But in his idea of what cool and tough is, which is different than what I've seen in previous comic iterations. And again, if you love Snyder, that's awesome. I think if he did this a few years from now, if DC's wildly successful, I think that's different because it's just a director adding a different flavor to a buffet, basically, as opposed to, you are only having this for dinner. This is the only thing you want. Well, I kind of wanted something else, but no, you will eat this and you will like it, as opposed to having multiple options. I think that makes the palette a little better here. Zack Snyder is good at very specific things, but I would still like the choice to be able to watch something else. And for a while there, he was the only real choice for DC. And they're my favorite comic book characters, and there was this disconnect there. So, I think they're doing this so that Warner Bros. Can maintain some sort of a healthy relationship with him, but he very well might jump ship to Netflix if they don't want to continue to expand his thing. Now, he's talked about, after the Snyder Cut, expanding his world with Jim Lee in a comic book world. That could be interesting. I think that would be intriguing to me more so than continuing it on in the world of movies, because then it is an Elseworld story, and then it is continuing his story, but in the medium of comics. That I don't know why that's different to me, but that sounds more intriguing to me.